Heritage Words, a podcast about the words we've inherited from our ancestors and the meaning they bring to our lives. Heritage Words is produced by the HUC Jewish Language Project, which raises awareness about Jewish ancestral diversity through the lens of language. I'm your host, Sarah Bunin Benor. Our guest today is Sam Miller. Sam is a computational linguist. He's half Ashkenazi and half Nash-Didan, and he is one of the last speakers of Lishan Didan, also known as Jewish Neo-Aramaic from Urmia, Iran. He works on documenting and preserving this language with the Jewish Language Project through various documentation and language advocacy efforts. Sam, welcome to Heritage Words.
Uh, Hello, it's very nice to be here.
So I want to start by asking about your names. I know you as Sam Miller, but your screen name says Shmuzel Shimon. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so I'm named after both of my grandparents. My paternal grandfather was Shmuel, or in Yiddish they called him Shmuzel. And my maternal grandfather was Shimon, or Shimon is the Nashidan pronunciation. And I think if you're being really, really accurate to it, you should say Shmuzel Shimon, this kind of like half Yiddish, half Lishan name. But in reality, I just go by Sam for the most part. Or my grandmother. If you're my grandmother, you she would have called me Sammy June or Sam Bali, which are like terms of endearment. Sammy June is like Farsi, and Sam Bali. I think Bal is actually Turkish. Like Bali is like my child, but yeah. Unless you're my grandmother, Sam is probably the name I'm going.
Okay, that sounds good. And I like how you combined your multiple heritages even in your screen name. Okay, so tell us where your ancestors were from and when they came to this country.
Yeah, so we'll start with my dad's side. My dad's mom is from a shtetl outside of Kiev, Ukraine, which does not exist anymore. It has been been demolished. But she left for the US when she was about 4 years old in the early 1920s. And my dad's dad is from a town called Vysoka Litovsk, modern day Belarus near the Polish border. Their marriage, in and of itself, was a little bit of a scandal, tiny bit, because my grandmother was an Eastern Yiddish speaking Galicianer, and my grandfather was a Western Yiddish speaking Litvak. And then my dad married my mom, who is, of course, Nash-Didan. So it makes it seem like nothing in comparison.
Wait, wait,
My
wait. So
mother,
wait, one sec. So
oh,
when you say Western Yiddish, I think you just mean Litvak Eastern Yiddish, right? They weren't from Germany and
maybe.
Austria and yeah. So you're saying the intermarriage was between the Litvak and the Galicianer, right?
Yeah, so I do know that they spoke different dialects of Yiddish. I'm saying Eastern and Western just because geographically my grandmother was lived further east than my grandfather, but I actually don't know. Maybe the dialect clusters work differently.
Right, it's more north-south.
Yeah.
Okay,
Uh
so go on, and then you're on your
yeah.
dad's side.
Yeah, so
I mean,
that
on your
that's
mom's
with my
side.
dad's side.
Yeah.
Yeah, so my mother, she was born in Urmia, Iran, into a large Nesh-Didan family. My family is from Urmia for as far back as we can remember. The only exception really being my grandmother, my maternal grandmother, who was actually born in Georgia because her parents, due to like upheavals and like World War I time, there was a lot of political instability. They went to Tiflis in Georgia for a few years. They had her there and they came back to Urmi after that. I know many Nesh-Didan Jews didn't, like they stayed in Georgia or they went to other places, but my family actually wound up just coming back to Urmi. Um, that's the alleged story. My grandmother would sometimes claim that she was born in Iran and never not in Georgia, but yeah. And then my grandfather is the same, like he's from Urmia, his family's from Urmia as far as we know. Yeah.
And do you know if
Uh,
do you know if your grandmother ever learned Georgian?
Um, she didn't know Georgian, no, but the whole family speaks a lot of languages. We have a long list if I can go through them.
Sure, let's hear it.
So the first thing is that the main language is Lishan Didan, Jewish Neo-Aramaic. That is their main language, the primary language of the family. That's what was spoken in the home. Outside of the home, we have Farsi and Azeri Turkish. Farsi would probably come from school, but also just in general, that's like the language of the government there. That's the language that things are happening in. Azeri Turkish, Azeri is what's being spoken on the streets. It was the especially by the time my mother was there, Azeri was like the main ethnic majority of the region. Um, there's also a little bit of Kurdish. My family ran a fabric store. My mom's dad is the one who learned it because he was doing a lot of business with the Kurdish people. They would actually, the politics are a little complex as to why they specifically wanted to come to a Jewish fabric store instead of, say, an Assyrian one or a Persian Muslim one or this one or a Turkish one or this one or that one. But they came down and but before the winter they would come down with like barrels of yogurt as gifts for the family actually, and that was like the yogurt the family would have for the winter. uh, and there is one Kurdish phrase which has been passed down in my family from this, which is sar savan sar chavan, which is it's basically saying you're welcome or no problem. It means like upon my eye and upon my brow. And it's the one phrase that we like kept from this. We have a similar phrase in the Shandidan actually, "Resh eni resh reshi," like upon my eye, upon my head, and it means the same thing. Um, but I guess there's still some Kurdish that's left, I guess. My mom's maternal grandparents, so my grandmother's parents, spoke Armenian. I have no idea why they spoke Armenian. I don't know where they learned it. I don't know where they picked it up, but we know they spoke Armenian because that was the secret language they spoken when they didn't want my grandmother to understand what they were saying. Um, so then we get to Georgia. They were in Georgia for a few years, so we can guess that my great grandparents spoke Georgian. They were there for a few years. They probably spoke a little bit. Um, and lastly, you can't forget Hebrew. There were Jewish primary schools in Urmia. The Jews in the community went to school. They learned Hebrew in school. They actually had a schooling path that's very similar to what modern American Jews might find. They would go to a Jewish primary school and then go to a public high school, and then continue on if they were continuing continue on to college. Um, like my mother. The In that school, they would have also learned like languages, I guess, like French, English, or Arabic. It would be like a foreign language like you would take in any school. So I guess you can add those on too. And part of this is I wanted to really highlight is that the Jewish schools were actually quite strong in Urmi. Assyrian Christians would actually send their children to the Jewish school and they would just leave early before like the religion classes. They would just go in the morning for the secular classes. Again, because there were some complex political tensions, they didn't necessarily want to send their kids to like the Muslim schools, but the the main point is that I think a lot of people have this image of Aramaic speaking Jews or Kurdish Jews as kind of like uneducated village people and very backwards. And like Urmia is not that. Urmia is a very old and a very large city, and the Jewish community was very much a city-based community. They were like merchants. They had like they had schools and education, and it's like a big point to like fight against the stereotype.
Yeah, and so Urmia is in the Kurdistan region, right? That's between Iran, Iraq, and other surrounding countries. And is it mostly Jews that lived in Urmia, or was it a very mixed town? Like, do you know what percentage Jews were of the population in Urmia?
Very small because it's a very large city. Like I think today there are 10 million people. I probably was a lot less than 10 million back then, but it was a proper city. Like there were maybe at the height 2-3 thousand Jews who lived there, so like a decent community, but like it's going to be a small percentage, and it was a very diverse city. Assyrian Christians, Kurdish people, Azeri Turks, um, the Persians, Armenians, Jews, uh, even the local version of Romani people. We call them Karachna, but which actually isn't such a nice word, similar to how it would be people have nice words and not nice words in other languages, but we actually had that as well. So it's a very, very diverse city.
Well, that sounds like you know so much about the places where your ancestors were from. How did you learn all that? Did you talk to your parents and grandparents about it?
Yeah, asking. Like I think sometimes like I'm curious, I want to know, and you just gotta ask. I don't know.
Okay, so then how did your ancestors come to America?
Um, my by dad's family, I think they came in the middle waves of Ashkenazi immigration before World War II. Actually, there was a whole thing on my dad's father. My great grandfather came to the States and then left his wife and children behind so that they could come. And then there was the Spanish flu outbreak in the middle, and it took 7 years. And my grandfather actually never really met his father until he was seven because of that. But they made it over. My mother's family, following the revolution, they were some of the last Jews left in Urmia. The family was split. Some had gone to Israel already, and some had stayed. My grandmother, her parents were in Israel, her siblings were in Israel, but she was still in Iran. And then it really, like, it was very difficult to get out after the revolution. There was the Iran-Iraq War. It was very difficult to get exit visas. They wound up booking a round trip ticket saying that they were going on vacation. And with the help of Chabad and some other immigration stuff, they managed to get out. My mother through Italy, she was there for a few months. And then she came to the United States. They got her paperwork, and my grandmother and my uncle, they figured out they were Jewish because their names were Jewish. So they denied their first application, and they actually wound up then going again through Turkey and then Vienna and then to the States. I have another uncle who was already here who actually had a student visa, and he was studying in university here in the United States first, and he was able to sponsor them kind of, but they got political asylum, and they got their green cards from religious persecution.
Wow. And so what, do you know what year they ended up in the US?
1987.
Oh, wow. Okay. So you have learned the language of your mom's side, and tell us how you did that.
So I think a big part of it is that it was the primary language of my mother's family. So on holidays, whenever the family was together, that's what it would I would hear spoken around me. My mother's English is very good. The rest of my family was My grandmother, not really any English. So it was like, I heard it a lot. But their English was enough that they did speak to me in English for the most part, or tried to. So I was like kind of picking it up and kind of not picking it up. But by the time I was 11 or 12, I already knew that it was important to me to learn the language. And this was for two main reasons. First was for my grandmother, as I mentioned. Her English was not really so good, and I couldn't really communicate with her well, and I wanted to have a relationship with her. And so, I mean, I could have picked another language, and like she said, Farsi is a prettier language. That is what my grandmother told me. Why are you learning Lishan Didan? But even at that age, I understood the weight of the fact that the language would likely die with me if I didn't do anything. And I kind of just didn't want to carry that burden around. Like it felt like a really heavy thing to be like, damn, that was my generation that let it go. Like that was something that I saw in my lifetime. I don't know, that felt very heavy to deal with. And for that reason, I specifically chose Lishan Didan. I was like, no, I like when I speak to my grandmother, I want to speak to you in Lishan Didan, not like another language that you speak, not one that is going to be useful to me for some other purpose, but one that I would be able to connect and understand my culture with the best.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, but it's really surprising that you came to that conclusion at age 11. That's very unusual.
Yeah, um, I don't know. I think it's interesting because I know a lot of people at that age tend to reject the language, but it was never forced on me. Like no one ever really tried to make me speak. So I didn't have any negative emotions about it. All I knew was there's this language that I think nobody else knows. Like at the time, like I was really like I didn't know how many speakers there were. I just knew that my family were the only people I knew who knew how to speak. And I was like, damn, that would be a real shame if that's it.
Yeah, and that's quite a burden for an 11-year-old to feel.
Yeah.
So do you know other families that have a similar pattern where there's someone in your generation who did choose to learn it?
My language, no. I do know, like I do know of other people who have determined from a young age that like they want to speak the language that their family speaks. Um, Lishan Didan, I know that a few people had interest. I don't know if any like second or third cousins. I don't know if any of them followed through. I'm not really in touch with them. The only thing I know is that one of my second cousins just had a daughter, maybe like last year or something, maybe less than that, and her grandparents want her to speak. And she is allegedly going to be raised speaking. So that's the only person I know, and it's actually great for me because I no longer get to say that I'm the youngest speaker. And it's while it's a cool thing to be able to say, "Wow, I'm the youngest speaker of a language," that is not a title I want.
Wow. Yeah. And so who do you speak Lishan Didan with?
Um, my I used to speak with my grandmother before she passed away a few years ago. Um, Mostly my grandmother. Now my uncle and my mother, my uncles, um, that's what we speak, especially if I'm in public and I don't want people to understand what I'm saying. I'll use it.
And are there people that you communicate with online?
Not really. I don't really know, like I'm aware that there are some people who are learning Jewish languages and that they have interest in this stuff. I don't really know of anyone who's interested in, or has heritage in my dialect specifically. I do know of some people who are interested in one of the Iraqi dialects, like there I know there's some interest in that. There's a WhatsApp group chat I'm in, but no one really directly in contact with. We do have the Nash-Didan Facebook group, which is where the older people in the Nash-Didan community, and now they're older. I don't know, maybe they'll get angry at me if I say that they're older, but they have a Facebook group with a few thousand members in it, and they regularly post and talk in Lishan Didan. But I'm about to be 24 next week, and they're not 24. So there's only so much talking that we're going to be doing
Well, so is the Facebook group conducted only in Lishan Didan or also in some other language?
in Hebrew, a lot.
Uh-huh.
Sometimes you'll see Turkish on there, sometimes you'll see Farsi on there.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So tell us about some of the cultural products that you've created in Lishan Didan or about Lishan Didan.
Cultural products. I think one thing that I've done, there was this famous Nash-Didan singer, which is like the famous Nash-Didan singer, which is Nisan Aviv. And he put out a few albums in Lishan Didan, and it's pretty much the only recorded Lishan Didan music we have access to. And I've taken a few of his songs and like transcribed and translated them and made some lyric videos. Uh, I have, what else have I done? I know I've done more. I took a lullaby, right? And then the Sarah Brat Asher lullaby, and we put that up. I know there's a dictionary that's like in the works, hopefully.
Have you been involved with the dictionary?
I've been involved with the dictionary, definitely not as much as it could be, but um, I really want that to get off the ground. So I gotta get more involved in it as always.
But you've also made some other videos. You made a video about an eclipse.
Yeah. I forgot I did that with the Jewish language project. I did. I made a little TikTok about the when it was the solar eclipse in Lishan Didan. It did make its way onto the Facebook group, and everyone was like, "Wow, wow, wow," Majvanile. But on the Facebook group, they're always like that. Every time you do anything related, they see like a young person interacting in the language. They're like, wah wah wah, kurati at robojvani this like kurati like bury me like they're very dramatic about it always.
Okay. And then you also translated Country Roads Take Me Home into Lishan Didan. Tell us about that.
Oh, yes, yes, yes. I had this idea for a while. I thought it would be pretty funny. We took country roads. I took country roads and I translated over into Lishan Didan and then sung it and recorded that and posted that, which was very fun for me. I don't know if it
Yeah.
was fun for
And
anyone else. Let's see if it really goes viral, then I'll say it was fun for other people.
well, I don't think it's gone viral yet, but hopefully after this podcast, more people will know about it. And I think it's great that you're doing these videos and involved with the remaining speakers to preserve the language to varying extents. So tell us about before you started learning the language explicitly and talking to your grandparents and parent mom in this language. What were some words that you heard from the language while your family was speaking English? Some heritage words.
Yeah, heritage words. So I think mainly it's food is what are these words that like even had I not learned it, I probably would have known them. A lot of time it's mainly stuff that like really doesn't have a good equivalent in English. So shifteh, which is it's kind of like gondi for people who know what gondi is. It's pretty similar. You take bulgur wheat and you mix it with like ground beet, and we make it a little spicy, and then you boil it with turmeric. It becomes like yellow on the outside, and we usually eat it sliced, cold sliced with honey on top, inside of like lavash bread. It's a food. I People should try it. I can't eat it anymore because it's not gluten free, and I'm gluten free. But
Mm.
I wish I could. I have to figure out how to make it gluten free.
Yeah, you could just use
Um,
some other grain instead of bulgur, right?
yeah, yeah. I mean, in Gondi they use chickpea flour, so I'm sure there's a way. Another food, the chortuma, is a stew. It's probably my favorite food. It's a stew. It's not very complicated. Onions, potatoes, eggplant, meat, uh, string beans, tomato sauce. Yeah, it's pretty simple stew. Um, tava is it's hard to explain. It's like a really thick pancake uh, and you fry it in honey. And we usually have it with dolma. We call it dolma mishka, like the oily dolma or literally dairy dolma, as opposed to the meat one that people often make. We usually make the dairy one so we could have it with tava because it's dairy. And then we eat it with yogurt as well. And that is a traditional food, tava dusha. Yeah, and stuff like that. Chai for tea. Actually, I made some here, chai. Um, but yeah, and it's stuff like that. And then also ingredients for food, like maybe spices or stuff that aren't so common in English. So I would just use the Lishan Didan. Hell for what is hell? Cardamom, I think. Mazra is marjoram. Um, Stuff like that. Yeah. Actually, I said bulgur wheat earlier, but I usually would call it balgur. That's what I grew up calling it. I didn't know that it wasn't balgur. That I didn't even know there was an English word bulgur.
And so,
And I
so
don't want to forget. Oh, sorry. I don't want to forget Yiddish because I do have some Yiddish heritage words. We do throw in a taka every so often or an eigewalt. I was called a nudnik growing up, so um, don't not to forget it. There are still also some other heritage words thrown in there.
yeah. Okay, wait, but I want to get back to the foods. So
Yeah,
did your family use those words in English? Like they would say, go get the balkur and the marjoram. We're gonna make
yeah,
shifteh or something.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, so yeah, that's a very common thing, especially for my mother. Sometimes she'll use the English, sometimes she won't. Uh, or like sometimes it'll take her a while to think about the English, so the Lishani then is more accessible. Like Zardachiwa for turmeric, for example. Yeah, or but the foods, of course. Like even if they have a like even if you can come up with an equivalent in English, you wouldn't like it's the name. It's like a proper name. It's the name of a food. Like we're eating shifteh. Like even my dad would call it. Uh, even if his accent isn't always the best, sometimes he's pretty good, and like that's what it's called. I the actually what's really interesting is the churtuma is kind of an exception for that. A churtuma is what my grandmother would call it, but I actually grew up calling it khoresht, which is the Farsi for stew, which is interesting. And it took me a long while to realize first that when most Persian Jews talk about Khoresh, they're actually talking about Khoresh Sabzi or Gorma Sabzi instead of this one, which I would call Khoresh de Lubiya. But even then, Khurtuma isn't exactly the same as Khoresh de Lubiya. I didn't realize that I was. First of all, we were still using a heritage word. We were using the Farsi, but also we weren't using the Lishan Didan. But it was like still a distinct food, like regional food. Very, very interesting situation, actually.
Well, so what's the lubia? Tell us more about that.
Lubia is beans, so it's string beans. Like that's the stew is it's like khoresh de lubia, stew of string beans. And that's Farsi. I always grew up calling it just khoresh stew. Um, but the proper Lishan Didan word for it is churtma, is the name of the dish. And like for my grandmother, if I just said khoresh, she would be a little like, what kind of khoresh? Say churtma, she knows. Oh, churtma, okay.
Okay, that's cool. And so then aside from foods, so you mentioned some Yiddish words. Do you also have Yiddish food words in your family?
No, unfortunately, I think we haven't passed down a lot of the Ashkenazi foods. Like, I mean, I've had some obviously. Like, I had matzo ball soup, had brisket. Like, I've had some of the classic Ashkenazi foods, but a lot of the ones that would have Yiddish names or be obscure, I'm not sure my dad knows how to make them. Um, and my grandmother has not been alive for a while, so I never really had them.
Okay. So aside from food words and then the few Yiddish words you mentioned, what about other categories like terms of endearment? Earlier you mentioned June, and I think there was another term of endearment that your grandmother called you.
Bali, yeah, Bali, very
Ollie.
common.
Yeah.
Bal is literally it's like a child, but like a not human child, like a child of an animal. So like, Bal Kalba would be a puppy, like the child of a dog, or Bal Katulta is a kitten. So when you say Bali, it's like kind of saying like my pup or my it's really interesting because it's more generic than one specific animal, but it is kind of like you would like it's a very interesting term. But you should call me Bali a lot, a lot. Um, yeah, but I mean, obviously, I wasn't calling her Bali back, so
Right. And so other words, so was that just your grandma or also your mom?
my mother maybe. Um, there's like also, I mean, there's mama. My mother, I think, would use mama more often, and that's like really language agnostic. I think most languages in the region have it.
That's a word you would use to call your mom.
No, she would used to
No.
call me.
Oh, got it. So it's like,
Yes,
like Mama
yes,
Lena or something like that.
yes. Yeah, in Lishan Didan, mother is Dai. It doesn't even have an M in it.
Hmm. Okay. So what does mama mean then?
Mama is like I don't know. You call a child like mama. Like it's a term of endearment.
Okay. And then what about curses?
Purses. I don't know how many I've heard. My family is like a little. They try to be nice, so I didn't really hear a lot growing up. They don't speak so ill of other people, so I didn't hear them say a lot. We have some creative ones. I now know of some of them, but not really much that was used around me, at least as a kid.
Okay, what about other words that you used to refer to relatives like grandma, aunt, uncle, anything like that?
I really used English. Really, like my grandmother, she was Grandma R, in the classic English way. I mean, I know now that it is actually kind of similar to how it would be done in Lishan Didan, that you would actually say Dai, like I would call her Dai Rihan because her name was Rihan, so I call her like Mother Rihan. But I, after I started learning the language a bit more, I did start calling her Söti, which is like my grandmother. But it was always a little funny because it's not really something you would say. It doesn't like grandmother doesn't really have a vocative form. Like
Mm,
dae or dai is like a dai, like my mother. It's like a vocative form. Or uncle, like my maternal uncle, I can call him doi, and that's like the vocative form, like calling out uncle. But he didn't necessarily like I didn't necessarily use any of them growing up. I really used English.
yeah. Well, that's really interesting that you intentionally started saying the other word for grandma and it felt weird to you. So did you stop after it felt weird or did you keep doing it because that was
No,
the language?
no, actually, it was great because it was so weird and people it would like make people pause. It was a great way to get attention. Like if I really wanted to get her attention, I could say "Surti" and everyone would be like, "Why are you saying that?" But then they're paying attention to me, so now I have the attention.
Okay. Did you learn Hebrew in school growing up?
No, I actually went to public school since kindergarten. I did go to Hebrew school after school. I like learned how to read Hebrew,
Hmm.
but
Hmm.
there wasn't like an infrastructure to teach me how to speak and understand. Like I was in like elementary school, like and maybe fourth or fifth grade, something like that, and I kind of just dropped out because I was ready to start learning and understanding Hebrew, and there really wasn't anyone else, no other kids, not really a teacher. And
Mm.
so they tried like they started in the Hebrew school. I was at a Chabad Hebrew school. I learned a few words. Shulchan is table. I still remember it. My Hebrew is a lot better now because Lishan Didan is Aramaic, which is the closest living language to Hebrew. So there's a lot of cognates. So it's a lot better now. Um, I did have like a religious education. Like I knew I was taught how to like read from the Sefer Torah and stuff like that, but I wasn't to understand the words, not so much.
And what kind of synagogue did your family attend?
We attended I guess what you would call a standard modern Orthodox synagogue. It was nominally Ashkenazi in that like the rabbi was Ashkenazi and the main nusach was Ashkenazi, but more than half the people who attended were Persian. So you can really say that I was in a mixed synagogue. And I definitely had both. It is not uncommon to hear both like in the same prayer service to hear someone do it leading like the chazan leading in one in the Ashkenazi Nusach and then one in the Persian Nusach, like switching off in between Aliyot at the Sefer Torah. I really had like a mixed community.
So what did you do for your bar mitzvah?
I learned Ashkenazi for my bar mitzvah. That is what I was taught because that's like what teacher was available, and he did a very good job. I went back and tried to learn the Nusach of my mother's family later on. It's not actually the same as the standard Persian one, which makes it even harder. There's like a specific one. And to this day, I'm still not completely sure if it's the exact same one that they would have used in Urmi, but I do know that there is a Kurdish nusach, and I do know it now. Not that I use it so much, but
Wait, are you talking about the pronunciation, the te'amim, the tunes of
all
the
of
Torah?
it, all of it,
All of it?
all of it.
What about the prayers and the melodies of the prayers?
Melodies are going to be different. Obviously, I don't know so many of them because I mean, there isn't a Nash-Didan synagogue really anymore. Not really at all. I've been told that there is maybe kind of half of a one in Givatayim in Israel right now, but I don't know. I don't live there. Um,
So,
the
so you
Yeah,
think,
pronunciation I know. Pronunciation my family knows, right? Like I know like from the stuff that's done at home. My mother, my uncles, they know their Hebrew pronunciation very well. So I mean, it was a big thing in the it was a very important thing in the Jewish education back in Urmi, from what I understand, about pronouncing things correctly. So
hmm, so your family's modern Orthodox synagogue didn't have um, people who could teach you these traditions?
so there were a lot of Persian Jews who maybe could have done it, but no one else really Nashtidan. There were maybe one or two other people there who spoke a different dialect of Aramaic, but not. And even if there was, that doesn't mean that there's someone who's up to teaching someone for their bar mitzvah how to lead.
Mm,
And that doesn't mean I would have done it because my dad's Ashkenazi and I was learning Ashkenazi.
yeah.
I mean, but today I'm happy that I know both. That I
Yeah.
whatever synagogue I show up in, I can just do whatever.
Yeah. And so where did you grow up?
I grew up in Long Island. Uh, outside like in the greater Great Neck area, like greater Great Neck community, which is like the Persian Jewish community, not in Great Neck proper. But yeah, that's it's one of the largest Persian Jewish communities that there are today.
Yeah. And did you go to Great Neck High School or a different high school?
I went to the one of my town, like whatever
Uh-huh.
it was Roslyn, so it was like Roslyn High School. It's not
Okay.
like a particularly anything high school.
Okay. And then tell us about your education after high school.
After high school, I went to college. I got a degree in computer science, and then I also focused in linguistics as well. Um, I think is definitely you can't say that it's not motivated, at least partially, by speaking an endangered language. And I do want to be doing more research. I'm currently in grad school, I'm in my master's, and for computer science, and I really want to work on creating computational methods to help bolster the vitality of endangered languages. I'm still early on in research, and I don't know exactly what direction is really best, like what is actually going to wind up impacting communities and will be helpful for communities who speak endangered languages. But that is the direction that I want to go in at the very least.
Oh, that's wonderful. Have you worked on any initiatives like that already?
I mean, aside from the Jewish Language Project, not um, and some directly and not directly. I've worked in a little bit of research that has looked at some endangered languages. I think I have a published paper floating out there somewhere. Um, and we were looking at how we can include certain types of endangered languages in computational methods to help. The ultimate goal is to to get them to the point that maybe you can have them on Google Translate or something similar, or just even get it to the point where computers can even understand these languages without having the amount of data that we have in a language like English.
Right. So for large language models, you can do that with English and other large languages, but we would need for this kind of artificial intelligence, maybe a small language model because that would be the only option, right?
Yeah, well, I also think that in general, maybe we should be moving towards small language models, but we'll leave my opinions on the state of AI out of the interview. But the yeah, I wouldn't expect there to be a Lishan Didan chat GPT anytime soon, but I do think that there's definitely a lot of methods that involve close scholarly curation. Like a very like if you really meticulously gather data and set up a method, I think there is some good promise in the area to maybe get some computer models that can start working with these languages.
Yeah, and we do have a significant corpus of data for several varieties of Jewish Neo-Aramaic. The Northeastern Neo-Aramaic database at Cambridge University has transcribed and translated excerpts of speech with recordings. So, I guess we could use that to do some kind of automatic or automation, right?
Yeah, so with that data, what I'll say from a linguist perspective, it's a lot. Like it's great. We have so much information on these languages that we have dedicated linguists like Professor Jeffrey Kahn went out and did this amazing field work and got all this amazing research done. And from a linguistic standpoint, it's like an insane amount of research and an insane amount of documentation. From a computational standpoint, it's quite an impoverished amount of data. So I think we it's yet to be seen. I have hope. I have hope that we have a lot of work that we can do.
Okay, so what are the next steps in your opinion? You've done some work on the dictionary, and you mentioned that as something that should be worked on. And you've been creating some cultural products like those videos. What else do you think should be done for your language?
It's a hard question what should be done because who cares is the question. Is like what's like what you're doing is going to depend on who cares. And like it's a very valid question to ask that I think is often gets lost is there are there were never so many speakers of Lishan Didan to start with. Now that the numbers are dwindling, there aren't so many people even with this heritage, with Nash-Didan heritage. What do any of them care about? Like like for old people, for older people who spoke the language growing up and just don't have a lot of interaction with it, for them they want to see content, they want to interact with people in these languages, they want to be able to have some kind of relationship with their primary language. And so for them, I think making more video like content or any stuff on the internet where they can engage with the language is very important. Music is very important. I know there's this one woman, Hadassah Yeshurun, who sometimes puts out some songs in Lishan Didan, and it's very helpful for those people. Um, for if I knew that there was a core solid group of Nash-Didan young people who are interested and want to keep speaking the language, then I would say we want language learning resources. We want to make sure that it can happen. Um, the problem is that I'm just not aware of more than four or five people. Like I wish there was more. And I know broadly in Jewish languages, like there's a ton of interest. In a lot of languages, there's a ton of interest, but also a lot of those languages we're starting off with more than 2,000 speakers, right?
Yeah.
And it's really hard to say that I mean, like we are focusing in on one specific dialect. When you look at Jewish New Aramaic as a whole, it is a very widely spoken language, and there are a lot of dialects, and there are a lot of people who are really interested in speaking it. But when I talk about Lishan Didan, like my specific dialect or even my specific dialect cluster, um, I, I I struggle because I don't know. Sometimes, like I ask myself, like, what's the point of doing work if there isn't anyone to enjoy it? Really other
Hmm.
than myself. And sometimes I get answered when the people on the Facebook group love it and they say, wow, it's such amazing, then it's nice for me. But other than that, I don't know. And I mean, to that point, like if you're listening to this and you're Nash-Didan and you want to chat, come talk to me, please. If you have any interest at learning Lishan Didan at all, I will teach it to you.
That's
But
amazing. What a wonderful offer. And any listeners can get in touch with us at jewishlanguages.org, and then we'll connect you to Sam/Schmoozle Shimon Miller. And before we let you go, is there anything else you want to share with us about your ancestral language, identity, and community?
yeah, well, actually, there's a little something I wanted to share about how I learned it. I think that we brushed past a little bit, and there's the like. I think people often say like learning a language is hard, but they don't really say why, or they don't like it's kind of this opaque thing. And so I wanted to share exactly like the steps that I took to learn, to so people have an idea. They can like look if you want to learn a language that your family speaks, what is one way that you can approach it? And so one of the first things I did was I asked my mother how to say, how do you say? Which we would say makimriba, which is what do they say for? And then I would ask questions nonstop, nonstop, everything I could look at, I would ask a question. So if we're sitting and eating apples, I would ask Yamaila, like this, what is it? And I point to the apple, and my grandmother would respond, Chabusha, apple. Um, and then actually she would probably respond, "Chabusha, choshoch kede," like it's an apple. Do you want it? Like are you is this something you want to eat? And I would respond, like, yes, I want to eat the apple because you can't say no to your grandmother offering you food. Or rather, maybe you should say no a few times first. But uh, and so anyway, after this process, I started recording these words on my phone in a list, and this is something that I've seen not necessarily in the phone, but recording words that your family uses is something that I've seen from other people who have done this kind of work in other dialects, other Jewish languages. It is something that I've heard that when people have a lot of interest, they just start collecting the words and writing them down. And these are very, very important. Like these are really important for language documentation because they show how your family is speaking. A lot of times when you're making a dictionary, you're only getting one family or one. When you really want a culture, you need to like see how everyone uses it. And I know there are a ton of old people out there who have these lists written down. My uncle did it when he was younger, actually, even he started writing words down. I don't know. I mean, he lost it. I don't know where it is, but like I know there are these lists that are lying around, and there are young people who do it, there are older people that do it, and like those are very important. And it's a very useful method. There's a reason that it works because you need to write down the words so that they don't get lost.
Mm.
And for me, it was like especially a big thing. Like I don't know, like my grandmother was old. Like if she told me a word, that might be the last time I heard it used. You got to write it down.
Yeah, that's really helpful advice. And I know there are people working on that for various languages. And if anyone has such a list and they want us to help preserve it in dictionary format, they can also reach out to us at jewishlanguages.org.
Yeah, yeah. And the last thing is supportive friends. I can't express it enough how encouraging it is to have friends around you who are excited for you to also learn this language, even if they're not doing it with you. I have a very close friend who wanted to learn his family's language, Urdu, at around the same time as me, and we would practice together. He would like we would go around the room and we'd point to different things. And then he would say the word in Urdu and I would try to say the word in Lishan Didan. And if he didn't get it, he could go to Google Translate or a dictionary. And if I didn't get it, I'd have to write it down later to ask my family because there wasn't necessarily a resource I could have to search it up. I mean, if I was lucky, it would be in one of Professor Khan's books, like in the glossary, but it wasn't always so lucky. Um, the and yeah, and then you just play this game, and you get to practice. And for it's not fun for everybody, but if you know people who like languages, it can be a very fun game, and it's a great way to practice.
Mm, I love that. Important to have a supportive community, even if they're not learning your language with you. Well, Sam, thank you so much.
Yeah,
This was very enlightening, and thank you for all the wonderful work that you're doing to preserve Lishan Didan and for the Nash-Didan community and for the world.
yeah.
Oops, sorry, say that last part again.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Okay, take care. Heritage Words is a partnership of the Hebrew Union College Jewish Language Project and HUC Connect, supported by tax-deductible donations from listeners like you. I'm the producer and host, Sarah Bunin Benor. Kyle Elbaz Fingerhut is assistant producer, Avishai Artsy is editor, and Talia Ehrenberg is video editor. The music is from Maurice El Medioni's French and Algerian Arabic album Café Oran, featuring the Klezmatics David Krakauer and Frank London, courtesy of Piranha Records. This podcast is one of the many ways the Jewish Language Project raises awareness about the diversity of the Jewish people and the phenomenon of heritage words. We also have online crowdsourced dictionaries where you can find the words mentioned on the podcast. We post Jewish Word of the Week and fun facts on social media, and we offer free educational materials and exhibits that you can visit online or display in a synagogue, museum, or community center. Contact us about our live taping opportunities. Looking for gifts for Shabbat dinners and Passover seders? Check out our whimsical multilingual t-shirts, tote bags, stickers, and aprons. You can find all this content and donate, volunteer, or sign up for our email list at jewishlanguages.org. Thank you, merci mucho, soch boshi, rahmat, shukran, todaraba, ashenem dank.